Welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Talk. Uh I'm Colin Cole, and also we have David Porter joining us on the show today. David, thank you for joining me.
Dude, it's always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
I know it's a pleasure to be here. These circumstances, they're not the most favorable circumstances to talk Hawkeye football right now. Currently, it's been a bit of a difficult road for the Hawks, who are currently sitting at 3-3 after coming off of the second loss against the Illinois Fighting Illini. That's the last minute, really 9-6 loss. But plenty of opportunities in this game, David, to win. Plenty of opportunities, and just couldn't get it done. What did you see in the game, David?
Well, basically same thing you're talking about. Plenty of opportunities. The offense had the opportunity. They actually had some decent drives put together. Just for whatever reason, it stalled. Penalty, just poor execution. My God, that offense is just atrocious at times. I mean, it was 50 yards of running the ball, compared to Illinois' 200. And like we talked about in the pregame, it's going to be the O-line versus our O-line, Iowa's O-line versus Illinois' defensive line. That's really going to be the tell of the tape. And it's going to be the same thing the other way. Their O-line imposed their will on our defensive line. That's how they were able to get 200 yards rushing, right? And their defensive line was able to impose their will against our offensive line. They just kind of just came and crushed. I mean, at one point, I believe we had negative rushing yards going into the third quarter, maybe in the fourth, maybe midway through the third. So it was, we got thoroughly dismantled. And that's even with the backup quarterback for Illinois. That's a tough one. So to say this has been a tough season with the offensive woes that we're experiencing, I think you're being very kind about the whole situation.
It has been a disappointment this year. Let's just be frank about it. This has been a bit of a disappointing aspect of the season. We've talked about it on a number of occasions. There's nothing that we could sugarcoat about it. I mean, Hawkeye Nation, you guys see it out there. I mean, it's clear as day that offensively this team has struggled throughout the season. Questions about the entirety of the whole situation have swirled around the program since the beginning of the season. Since coming out the gate against South Dakota State, it's been a constant question about the offense and where they're going to manufacture points. It reared its head again this past game. It's unfortunate because these kids are the ones that are obviously working their butts off every day in practice. They don't want to put out performances like this, but this is what they're left with. Going through it a little bit, Spencer Petras went 18 for 36 for 170 yards, one interception, no touchdowns. Again, he was sacked 5 times in the game for a loss of 32 yards. So again, the offensive line struggles continue, and the inability to keep Spencer upright has shown his head again in yet another game. And it's difficult to think about how this offense may be different with a little bit more veteran offensive line, those guys up front. But that's what we're dealing with. That's where we are with this season. LaShawn Williams led the rushing attack with 7 carries for 33 yards. And Caleb Johnson was behind him. He actually had 9 carries for 30 yards. Gavin Williams also had 4 carries for 4 yards. Sam Laporta was the leading receiver. He came out and was really aggressive, man. I saw him make some tremendous catches, make some plays. Nico Reganey also played a hell of a role. He had a number of opportunities. Sam had 9 catches and Nico had 7 catches, respectively. Those guys played their hearts out. The rest of the offense definitely played their hearts out. It was just a difficult task in its entirety. And you flip it on the other side, the Illinois Fighting Illini, Tommy DeVito.
Sorry, man. Go ahead.
Are you good? Tommy DeVito, their starting quarterback, man. Went down at the end of the first quarter. What?
Yes. They lost a quarterback and they still kicked our butt. I'm like, what do you?
Yep.
Go ahead. Let's go to the stats. Go for it.
Artur Sitkowski came in and went 13 for 19 for 74 yards and one interception. But he played a crucial role in leading that team down the stretch. Tommy DeVito only went 6 for 11 for 42 yards before he had to leave. He had a long run as well. But the tail of the tape, those of us who are out there are boxing fans. We always look for what that tail of the tape is. The tail of the tape is there in the rushing yards in this game for Chase Brown. We talked about him in the pregame, what he brings to the table, being the nation's leading rusher. And for Illinois fans, he did not disappoint. He went for 31 carries for 152 yards, and he didn't have any touchdowns. He had a long of 23 yards, but 152 yards by himself. Tommy DeVito was the second leading rusher with 21 yards. The team as a whole had 215 total yards rushing, as opposed to Iowa's 95, like you mentioned. So it was a bit lopsided in that statistical category. No touchdowns by anybody. But Brian Hightower had 5 catches for 68 yards. And like you said, man, the biggest part about it more so was just the fact of they were just able to sustain drives. They were able to put drives together, and offensively they did just enough. Even when Iowa had some turnovers and created turnovers, we had a short field with some opportunities. We just weren't able to complete it, David. So before we jump onto the defensive side, David, both offenses struggled to put the ball into the end zone, but as far as the Hawkeye offense, lackluster performance statistically. I hate to do it, man, but where does the Hawkeyes go from here? The noise is deafening. The noise is so loud, it's deafening, because there's a lot of outrage, a lot of people that are not happy with how this team is performing currently. But we're here to report on the facts. We're here to talk about this team as a whole as we see it, with the inner knowledge that we have. Dave, man, how does this offense turn around? How does this team find a way going into the bye week? We got a couple of extra days to game plan against the number 2 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. So how does this team get itself prepared for another matchup, a Big Ten matchup against the Big Ten perennial power Ohio State Buckeyes? But before we get to that, how does this team bounce back? Where do they find their footing? Where do the Hawks go from here?
That's a great question, and I wish I had a great answer for you. I really do. I mean, looking at what we have offensively, there aren't many places for us to get better there. I mean, we got, according to what the coaches said, they're the ones that are there every day. Like, they know better than we do. They're putting the best players out there. If they're telling us this is the best we have, I'm not sure where we go from here. The offensive line, you said Spencer was sacked 5 times.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the game before that, he was sacked. I mean, it was 3 untimely sacks, like in a row, back to back to back. It was bad. Sam Laporta is our star receiver as a tight end. That's he's leading all receivers as a tight end. That's just really crazy. This don't know. I mean, unless we Spencer, they say gives us the best opportunity. Maybe a dual threat quarterback teams there might help, but going up against, like you said, Ohio State, and we're going to Ohio State. We're going to be there in the big horseshoe. I'm not sure that's where you want to switch out the quarterbacks right now. Like I said, I wish we would have done that. What game was that? Nevada? Yeah, against Nevada. So we had the 2 games so he can get ready. I'll call them the tune-up games before Michigan came to town. Or no, before we went to Michigan. And I just don't know where we go right now. The running game is going to be able to get going. It doesn't look like we're heading that way. Pass game is basically ineffective. A lot of teams, especially the defense coordinators, they're looking at this stuff and saying, okay, we got to figure it out. Heck, Michigan, Harbaugh called our defense the Parker way. So everyone's getting pretty used to that defense and the style in which we play. That was very evident. And heck, Illinois went 16 plays on their first drive and 66 yards. So, um, right now, these kids, they got to band together and get in there and just work on one thing at a time. You know, um, you got you got the right tackle. He's opening up the gate still. And get him just to stay square. That'd be nice. Get a good start. Stay square. Don't give up the inside. Don't give up the outside. Really, just stay square. And last minute, get a good punch in. That's what you got to do. But there's all these little things that are just occurring on at the different positions, and it just happens to happen at different times. So when there's not a breakdown here, there's a breakdown there. So at one point, we just need to get to the point where we're fundamentally sound for all plays on every phase for an entire drive. That would be great. So limiting those mistakes and mental errors, that'll really be great. Maybe some different play calling, something a little more innovative where we're not throwing a tight end screen 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Actually catching the ball behind the line of scrimmage. My God, I don't know. I forgot how many tackles for loss we had. I think it was like 9. There were 9 or 10 tackles for loss. I think that was within our first 36 plays on offense. So changing up the play calling, getting these guys to focus maybe on one or two details as opposed to multiple things. So we have a young offensive line. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. There's a lot of details, and then getting our offense really to the point where they can sustain a drive. For the multiple times throughout the course of a game. Because right now, even playing against Illinois had the time of possession. They controlled the ground. Their offensive line controlled it. Their defensive line, their line controlled that game. Our defense is great. Our special teams are great. Without the offense there to really help balance it out, these guys, like I said, they really are just kids. They're going to get worn down as the season goes on, like any other human being would. And yeah, it's not all on them. He said it's a big perfect storm of just ineptness right now going on there.
Ineptness. That's a way to put it. Yeah, it's definitely an area. There are plenty of areas for this team to grow, get better, and particularly on the offensive side of the ball, they got their work cut out for them between Kirk and Brian over there. They got their work cut out for them, and people are becoming restless. So hopefully they can get some things figured out. Flip it over to the defensive side real quick before we jump off. Jack Campbell led the tackling for the Hawks with 13. Quinn Schulte, he actually had 9 and a timely interception. These guys have worked tremendously hard. Logan Lee actually had 9 tackles as well. Noah Shannon had 8. I'm sorry, no, Logan Lee had 8, and Noah Shannon also had 8. But one stat that I noticed that it didn't have was 0 sacks on the Illinois quarterbacks. So they had a number of tackles for loss, had some negative yardage plays, but no sacks. Where as I mentioned earlier, Illinois came away with 5 sacks on the game. So those negative yardage plays show up when it comes time for the importance of the game overall. But guys weren't able to get it done on the defensive side. But like we mentioned, it's tough, right? It's very tough when you talk about trying to win a game against Big Ten caliber opponents, and we talked about this in the pregame. Especially when we talked about running back and what he brings to the table, because he was tremendous. We saw him in a few of those games early on in the season, and he definitely showed tremendous ability, and he did not disappoint. So it is definitely a bit frustrating to see things turn out the way that they did. But talent just shows when it shows. A guy like Chase Brown, who again is just a junior, has plenty of ability, and you have to do a lot to corral a guy like that and keep a guy like that bottled up, and make him one-dimensional, especially when they have a backup quarterback, man. But it's quite frustrating to see a defense that has to get on the field over and over and over again because of the difficulties that are going on the offensive side of the ball. Just keeping it honest, keeping it frank. It's a difficult thing. And we're all watching the games. We all see what's happening. So hopefully, we can make some changes. All three phases of the game are what it takes to win these games. Obviously, we want to see the offense. It's horrible to say it, but it's kind of difficult and embarrassing to hear the announcers on TV talking about, well, if they could just sustain a drive, if they can just sustain a drive. That's frustrating. It's very frustrating for everybody in Hawkeye Nation. Very frustrating.
It is.
So,
man.
So,
hey, our offense, the ability we can't get the running game going. The rush yards we got crushed on. They more than doubled us. Penalties, they have fewer yards. They have fewer penalties for fewer yards. Illinois controlled the time of possession too. They were 3 for 3 on 4th down conversions. And they have 18 first downs and 316 total yards to our 222. I think that's what that was.
Yeah, we had a quarter of the rushing yards they had, and we had 52. With you added the negative plays, and they had 200. So a quarter of the rushing yards. And Illinois has clearly established themselves. Brett Bielema has established a culture there, and he's definitely found the players to fill that culture, man. So hats off to the Illinois Fighting Illini. They played just well enough to win that game, and those are the kind of ugly wins that you look for in a season where you're trying to build and find success. So that's off to that program. It's the first time they've won against the Hawks in 8 tries. So, is what it is. So that being said, man, I don't have anything else to say about this. I'm ready to flush it and move on. I'm Colin Cole. That's David Porter. This is Hawk Talk.
It sounds like I'm out.
I'm saying, like, I want to talk about it more. I want to get into it more. But good Lord, man, this is
we don't. We moving on to Ohio State. Like, it's just like, really, we got a 4.3 chance of winning against Ohio State. Like, what are we talking about? No. I'd rather talk about this game than the Ohio State game.
You're moving too fast. We are now talking about the bye week. Now we have to do everything we can to win the bye week. That's where I am with it. What do we have to do as a team, as a program, to win this week? Winning this week looks like getting guys back from injury, getting guys healthy again, getting guys through the week, and getting some good preparation going into the week following the bye week. Last year, we didn't fare so well coming out of the bye week. We faced Purdue, and then we came out of the bye week, and I think we faced was it Northwestern, and we took 2 L's in a row. So hopefully, we can change that trend. Obviously against the almighty Ohio State Buckeyes next weekend. But for the now, we got to talk about these guys, and hopefully they can make some changes and at least look at some other opportunities on offense. Look at doing some things differently, because right now it's just not working. So with that, I'm Colin Cole. That's David Porter. This is Hawk Talk. Click subscribe and all the other good stuff. Follow us on all the social medias. We love it, man. Appreciate you guys who have, and everyone who has. Jump on with us. Appreciate you. With that, that's my show. That's our show for the day. I'm Colin Cole. God bless and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.